All right, presenting my screen. Okay, hope it comes up.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, awesome. So good evening, everyone. It's us again. It's a 12 coffee virtual session with another industry leader. We have the honor to invite Shahrukh with us tonight. So Shahrukh, he is a senior manager in the AI Accelerator office at BMO. I think Shahrukh definitely has a very interesting background. I think he graduated from the University of Alberta in chemistry engineering, correct me if I'm wrong. And then he landed a job in Deloitte Monitor doing management consulting for a couple years, maybe a little bit longer than that. And then he became a senior manager in one of the biggest banks in Canada, which is BMO. So tonight, we'll like the event structure. So first of all, this is very important. If you have any questions that you want to ask, that you care the most about like Shahrukh's personal story or like just like anything that you want to ask, go to Slido, fill in with this event code, and then you can upvote or ask questions there. And we will answer the questions based on the time manner and also like based on the number of votes each question gets. So these are the points that Shahrukh will be covering tonight. I think we have already known about that. So just to give a little bit of background to the people that don't know what is 12 Coffee. So it's a bi-weekly virtual event. The event focuses on just like making the hiring, like anything related with career, right? Career stories, making the hiring standards, procedures more transparent, and then most importantly, getting your questions answered. So feel free to ask questions, feel free to connect with the speakers afterwards. And also we are actively looking for good ideas on how we can better fulfill these kind of like missions that we want to do. So for this event, we already know it will be recorded. And also I would like to ask anyone who can generously open up the camera. That would help a lot. It's just like so helpful if we can see the reactions and see which kind of topic bores you, which kind of topics that you like. That would be super, super helpful. A lot of thanks for that. And then we will do a 15-20 minutes presentation by our speaker Shahrukh tonight. And then we will just use the rest of the time to do the question and answering. Again, Slido, this is the code, ask or upvote. Just so if you don't know about Slido, Slido is a website, go there, the code box is here, very easy to use. If you need to see the event code again, 12 Coffee with Shahrukh. And also I think the link is also included in the emails that we previously sent. Thanks for everyone who opens up the camera. Last but not the least, to our dear collaborators, we are collaborating with mostly just like different offices from different universities. We like to say thanks to Geckos from U of T, grad from U of A, Centennial College Career Services from Centennial. And also we are collaborating this event with ASK, which the full name is Aggregate Intellect, which is a local community startup focuses on AI and data science. Thanks for making this event possible. All right, without further ado, let's give the time to Shahrukh. And Shahrukh, would you like to present something?
Would it be like, would you be able to present the slide that I sent through before, or we can wait until? We can do that a bit later. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm actually really humbled and happy at the response we got for this event, and appreciate you all taking the time in these crazy times and from your busy days to take the time and hear a bit about my story. So I'll try and leave more than 40 minutes for question and answers, because I think that's where you'll get the most value out of this session. But what I'll do in the sort of shorter 15, 20 minute, 10-minute, whatever, however long it takes is give a bit of a background of my story so far and how I'm at the role that I'm at right now, as well as give you a bit of an overview of what my team does and how we approach machine learning. So my name is Shahrukh Islam. I'm originally an international student to Canada. I came from Bangladesh when I was 18 years old, so almost 10 years ago now, which is crazy when I think about it. I did my undergraduate in chemical engineering at the University of Alberta. I think a lot of you are from there, primarily because, you know, at the time when I was coming, it was a great time for the province, and there's a very generous scholarship program, but also like it's a phenomenal school, and I learned a lot. Halfway through my degree, I was doing well in school, but I realized that engineering wasn't for me, or at least the traditional engineering path that I was subliminally told to go. Like, I don't know, work as a process engineer at Suncor or Shell or whatever was like the career path that was sort of the ideal from like my degree. So after the end of my third year, I started exploring sort of alternatives and things I was interested in. Something that really caught my attention at the time was natural gas trading. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's mostly like investment banking, but for commodities. So I was really fortunate to be selected for this one talent scouting event that they had. Um, where they paid for me to go to Calgary, which seemed like a big city at the time, coming from Edmonton, stay downtown at a hotel, and then participate in some, you know, really fun interactive sessions that they had. Thankfully, I performed well at that, answered a bunch of questions that they had, and you know, at the end of that session, they said, "Hey, we have an internship opening up in January. You should apply." I applied. It was a very competitive sort of process, but thankfully the interviews went well. They liked my ability to sort of learn and articulate, and I ended up getting a summer internship there. So I spent 4 months on the trading floor working with traders, building some really nifty computer programs actually, which was machine learning before it was called machine learning. Um, and that was my internship. It was really interesting, but you know, it was really fast paced, more similar to what I wanted to do with my life than the traditional engineering path. You know, lots of ambiguity, very fast paced. We were constantly on the move. The market was always moving and we were trying to make money. But I didn't find it very fulfilling because, you know, if you know how a trade floor works and how it operates, you know, its core guiding principle is we have to make more money and we're going to be smarter than everyone else, and hence we will make more money than everyone else. But you know, for me, like that was a great place to learn, but it wasn't very fulfilling. Um, so you know, I thought about, okay, where, like one, I still don't know very clearly what I want to do with my life. Secondly, I know there are things that I find interesting. So I like big picture thinking. I like dealing with ambiguity, and I like very strategic problem solving. But I also want an environment where I can learn as much as I can, as fast as I can, in an environment where I would get diverse experiences to then help me sort of figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And you know, when I thought about all of those factors, what made sense to me was consulting and strategy consulting in particular. So you know, back in the day, really wasn't as um, I don't want to say mainstream, but it wasn't as mainstream as it is now, right? I feel like more people want to get into strategy consulting now than like 5 years ago. But I was really fortunate to connect with some really awesome people in some of the best strategy consulting firms uh, out there. My strategy was, you know, obviously, you know, learn how to do case interviews and articulate my story well, but have a friend or a contact in each of the firms that I wanted to work in. And there were 5 that I wanted to work in. So the big 3, Deloitte, IBM. So MBB, Deloitte, IBM, and Deloitte, within Deloitte Monitor, and I think PwC. Anyway, so I had a friend in each of those firms, talked to them, you know, interviewed with almost all of them. Interviews went really well, but where I thought was the best fit for me, based on my personality and what I wanted to do, ended up being Monitor. So I'll always think of Monitor Deloitte as sort of like my home ground, if you will, to bring a sports analogy. But that's where I spent 3.5 years of my career, three and a bit years of my career. No, it was less than 3. God, it feels like a lot longer because of the hours I put in. But it was absolutely phenomenal. First in the Calgary office, then in the Toronto office, working across like 10 different industries, working with the NHL at one point, working on very big corporate strategy projects and M&A projects. But what I started to realize, and then sort of honing into financial services because I started to find that interesting, and then moved to Toronto. What I started to realize was, based on my strategy experience and like speaking to executives and like helping them figure out what their future would be, there's a real opportunity cost in this world of just having a strategy skill set, because the world is evolving so fast. So if you think about 20 years ago, like the strategy skill set was the skill set you needed, because if you have a great strategy, you then have 3 years to execute on it and then transform around it and then monitor it and like make tweaks to it in that time frame. And a lot of it didn't involve technology. It was essentially listening to your customers and building products or driving initiatives that were very divorced from technology, right? But as the pace of change moves faster in this world, and digital products become sort of your competitive, sort of like competitive driver, right? Like ultimately now, even banking, right? Like when you're evaluating a new bank, like the first thing you're going to think about is like, what is the digital experience? What can I do on my app? And what are the features that it's giving me that the other banks aren't? In addition to obviously cost and things like that, which are all commoditized. So the second sort of pillar, in addition to strategy, that I wanted to combine with my skill set was digital product, and I'll go into that later. And the third thing, and this was common across all the corporate strategies we did. And the third thing that I saw was increasingly important, and like you see it in these hype cycles around machine learning, was data. So if you ignore all the hype around machine learning, and there's hype for many reasons, but all businesses are becoming data driven, and data and the predictions you make from data is becoming the competitive advantage for all businesses across operations, across strategy, across distribution, and all of that. So basically what I did like when I got promoted from Monitor Deloitte and thought I had taken a lot of the learning from there, was like, okay, how do I now combine the strategy skill set with the digital product management skill set and the data and AI skill set that I want to build, without obviously getting too technical, because that's something I was never super interested in. And that sort of led me to Omnia, which was Deloitte's AI practice. And they were just kicking that off at the time. And where I ended up there was I became a product owner for one of our main AI products at the time, D-Tracks. So that was a very, very challenging role, but a role that I learned a lot from. Someone once told me that I went from the least technical part of Deloitte to the most technical part of Deloitte, working with data scientists and developers to build a product and deliver it to one of the largest FIs in the world at the time, is what we were doing. So that was really interesting. But essentially what that helped me was to learn digital product and AI. Now in this new role at BMO, which is like, I'm very fortunate to have this role. And, if you wouldn't mind putting up the slide that I sent you, I essentially get to combine all three things that I learned over the last 4 years, 5 years, or however long it's been. So if you go to the last slide in this deck, next one. Oh, sorry. So essentially what my team does is we combine strategy, product management, and machine learning, grounded in financial services expertise, to drive real AI transformation. Now, what you realize as you step into the industry or as you, deal with more teams in industry is that traditional AI teams tend to view data science in isolation, right? So what they will do is like they'll create these phenomenal models who are going to be really great at predicting something, or they're going to use the best modeling technique. Uh, but it's really, but the challenge is driving business impact for that, right? And the two reasons for that are one, you're not solving the right problem, even though it's a great prediction, which is where the strategy comes in. Or like it's not really resulting in competitive advantage because you haven't thought about it to the extent that you would have needed to, or it's not grounded in the user experience that the user finds desirable. And that really leads to suboptimal impact, right? Like you're gonna have a great algorithm, no one's gonna use it, or it's really not gonna have any business impact for you. So what my team does is we collaborate across BMO, across our lines of businesses, so wealth, capital markets, business banking, which is my favorite part of the organization, personal banking, etc. And we not only think strategically about competitive responses to the market dynamics and how to respond to that with new capabilities, but also we ground it in a great user experience that's grounded in like solid UX and UI research, as well as like product methodologies like jobs to be done, etc., which I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. And we have a world-class team of data scientists who are literally winning awards that can then execute and build on the algorithms that bring it all together and drive transformation. So that's what I do at BMO. It's a lot cooler than working at BMO might say to you by default. And I every day feel pretty fortunate to be able to do this. Also, like what helps is that Ren, our chief data scientist, and I have a really good relationship. So she gives me a lot of freedom to do essentially what I want to do because she trusts me to sort of drive impact. So yeah, like it's almost a year now, and it's been a great experience so far. I'll stop there. I know I said a lot of words, and maybe we can do questions specific to stuff I've said until now before moving on to the questions you have from before. Does that work?
Yeah, sure. I think we can. I'll start by my questions, and then
Yeah.
feel free, everyone, to type in the question in the chat box. We'll just ask by the orders that they come in.
Yeah.
So first question, how many people are there in your team?
That's a really interesting, and like I can get philosophical about it, or I can not get philosophical about it. I'll get philosophical about it. So I'm going to keep bringing up cross-functional teams because I think that's the future of teams and that's what drives impact. So I think when I was in strategy consulting, and like I keep saying I learned a lot, but it was like 5 of us with essentially the same strategy skill set, trying to solve a really ambiguous problem and come up with a decision really fast and get executives aligned. While that was amazing, it's not how I think impact is made today, right? So if you go to the Googles and Amazons of the world, like that's not how they operate. So my team, as I think about it cross-functionally, is pretty big. We have a bunch of data scientists. So for any one project at any one time, it might be like 10 people. And that'll be like myself, the product manager, maybe another product manager, a designer, on the sort of strategy and design product side. But then with that, we'll have obviously data scientists and developers. If you think about it, my function only, it's currently a team of 7 or 8, but we're all, mostly former consultants who have the obviously ML grounding and the product management experience who can like effectively do this role.
Sounds good. I'll just ask one more question.
Yeah.
Are you currently hiring?
Yeah, so broadly, BMO is hiring. BMO Enterprise Data and AI, which is the team I'm in, is hiring. My particular team within the accelerator office right now doesn't have any open posts, but we just hired someone that was an internal hire, but a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pushing to grow my team over the next couple of months. So soon we should. Our
All right.
stock went up yesterday after results, so that's always a good sign.
Cool, awesome. Let's see, we have one question came in. Could you elaborate more about the product you own at Omnia AI?
Yeah, it's public, so you can Google it, but it's called DTRAX. It's essentially a machine learning driven contract extraction and management system. Um, what it does is it generates contracts based on user-defined requirements and fields. It helps legal teams manage the process of um, signing that contract and negotiating that contract digitally with counterparties. And third, where the machine learning comes in is, let's say you're Goldman Sachs. You're going to have 5,000 contracts in force, but you want to isolate um, certain topics uh, from those contracts, right? So let's say there's a regulatory event that's happening, and everything that has something to do with one type of regulation or affects one type of instrument, you would want to isolate and flag. And you would want to go into each of the contracts and say which particular parts of the contracts are affected by this new change. And there's really no way to do that manually without machine learning. Sorry, there's no way to do that automatically without machine learning. And manually, lawyers are really expensive, and it's a very cost-effective process. So every time a regulatory event comes, like, these legal teams are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to do that. But this program can essentially do that automatically for 90x% of the use cases. So yeah, it's a holistic sort of contract management solution. I never had any legal experience going into it, but learned pretty fast.
Yep. So DTRAX, DTRAX. If anyone wants to Google it, feel free to Google it.
Yeah.
Just want to point out one thing. Every company has like their legal team, and also there are many NLP use cases coming from of the like legal department, just because how costly to hire lawyers to do those manual works. That's why you should spend some time looking into NLP stuff. That's one of my favorite. I also worked on DTRAX for a couple weeks, I think, but yeah. Anyways, awesome. Next question. And can you give us an example about your projects these days at BMO?
Yeah, I certainly can. I'm gonna think about what's confidential and what's not. What I'm doing right now is actually really cool. It's for one of our business segments, and we're thinking about and designing an experience of, and it's in the corporate segment, so it's not retail, so it won't show up on your app. But we're thinking about how do we give them digitally deliver relevant ML driven, it's insights, but it's broader than that, like real-time triggers and insights to better run their businesses. And the possibilities are pretty endless, right? So with machine learning, and particularly with deep learning, and like the intersection of deep learning and transactional data, you can do so much. You can help businesses figure out when they're going to have a cash flow shortage. You can help businesses figure out what their cash flow projections are 6 months out. You can help them figure out where, in which expense categories they're spending more than they normally would. You can help them figure out, flag transactions that might not be in the ordinary, not just from a fraud perspective, but like, spikes relative to what they spend on maybe for rent. So that's the suite of solutions I'm working on, and designing the entire digital experience, and like, getting the buy-in from executives, setting the strategy, doing the market scans to figure out what exists in the market, and then executing. So that's really interesting. And I think that, I'll talk about this a lot, but the next evolution in financial services is data-driven, right? Like everyone, like the baseline financial services products have become commoditized, right? So like you can go to any bank, you can get a savings account. You can go to any bank, you can get a checking account, and like, you go to any bank, you can get a GIC. but like what's going to differentiate us, we believe, is going to be the intersection of data and digital, and machine learning, obviously, within data. And so like that's why we're really laser focused on providing sort of these auxiliary services and insights to our customers. So that's one. The second one was more in the pricing domain, which is very sophisticated segmentation of customers to price them right, to both improve our risk profile and profitability. The third thing is, gosh, I can't say too much, but it has to do with recommendations and, you know, a very, very cool, powerful engine that takes into account the entire customer relationship. What else am I working on? There's a whole bunch of stuff, but those are, I think, the highlights.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. They asked for one example. You give three. That's 300% of the deliverables. Yeah. So we'll just cut off the questions with the current three left, and then we'll switch to the questions that people previously asked.
Sure.
So next one, do you use any of the skills you gained during your chemical engineering education at your job now? That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Does Econ 101 count? I use Econ 101 all the time. Yeah, like I think you're learning way more than chemical engineering from an undergraduate degree, right? Like you're learning, you know, a lot of soft skills, but a lot of hard skills that carry through. Like I'm relearning coding and I'm learning Python again, and I learned MATLAB in school, so that's really helpful. Yeah, so things like that help. Cool. To be perfectly candid, like from a hard skill point of view, not a lot outside of my electives help, but that's okay. Like the half-life of an education degree, which is the time after which half of your degree becomes irrelevant. I think 3 years ago it was 3 years. Now I think it's probably 2. So essentially 3 years after you graduate, half of what you've learned in your undergrad degree is irrelevant. In 6 years, it's 75%. And in 9 years, which is by the time you're 30, like 90% of your degree is going to be irrelevant. So if you're consistently vectoring on what you learned in your undergraduate degree and you're not learning new skills and you're not learning how to think broadly and strategically, I think the world is going to pass you by. Is my philosophical answer to that question.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, I didn't know about those percentages. That's interesting.
It's pretty interesting, right? And I think the world is moving so fast, it's going to become like shorter.
All right, so next one, what advice you would give to people who does not come from a commerce background to find jobs in consulting firms? And do you have advice for consulting job interviews? That's like a very complicated questions.
Yeah, well,
just maybe answer in a couple sentences.
Yeah, like the first one is easy, right? Like I don't think they want people from finance backgrounds only. Like they would hire people from STEM backgrounds way faster than they would. You know, it's a way to differentiate and not something I would say would hold you back. For consulting interviews, like I find people really underestimate authenticity. I genuinely think authenticity and the ability to think on my feet and having a clear strategy is what got me my job, right? Like I didn't really practice cases. I practiced like cases for 2 weeks before the interview. I don't come from a traditional background and all of that. So I think that's what got me my job. And that's carried forward, right? Like that's what helps me succeed at BMO, thankfully. And that's what helps me be a good professional. So yeah, like authenticity and ability to think on your feet.
That's awesome. I practiced case interviews for a couple of months, but didn't get the technical analyst job at Deloitte. But
they made a mistake.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah, next one. How would you see people who transition from project management to data science? How can they best fit in?
From product management to data science, or
see people who transition from project management to data science?
Management. Like I think it's all about finding the right role, right? Like, you know, data science needs project managers as well. Data science needs product managers as well. So, you know, if you want to remain non-technical, I think that's certainly possible. It's the problem is that people haven't figured out what the team structure needs to be to drive impact, right? I think as the space matures, you'll see more project managers, more product managers in these fields. but if you're asking about like becoming technical and learning how to do deep learning models, I think that's an entirely sort of separate conversation, and you need to develop like hard skills to do that, right?
Cool. We actually got lots of questions asking about the explainability of deep learnings in the banking world. We'll come to that later.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple more questions that I think that everyone cares a lot. What kind of candidates would you hire? Like what
Yeah.
kind of like core qualities you're looking for?
Yeah. So for my particular team, I really need people, obviously, who have high intellectual horsepower, but are very they're very good at lateral thinking, which I'll say a lot. So, ability to pick up new domains fast, but also translate and communicate across those domains to drive impact. So that's one. The ability to like zoom out and see the big picture is really important in my role. So a lot of my job is just prioritizing and like telling people what's next, right? So um, figuring out where we can get the most bang for our buck in terms of investment leading to outcomes. I think that's really important. I really value high energy because like I'm a fidgety person myself, but I also think it's very important in the kind of role that I have. And sort of going with that is like work ethic, right? Like I work very, very hard, and I expect my teams to work very hard as well. Not necessarily like 60 hours a week or whatever, but like if and that's not the type of hard work I mean, right? Like this is not investment banking, but if you're doing a piece of work, are you thinking through it to the extent that you've thought through all aspects of it? Like, do you have that sort of intellectual work ethic versus just like spending 70 hours at your desk? And I think that's something I look for. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is the ability to translate um, problems that people face, like our customers face, into like designs of new solutions. And that comes from a couple of angles, right? Like that's the interface design. Like, can you like quickly whiteboard out, what the ideal future state would be? And that's really hard for a lot of people, right? Because like you're essentially going from 0 to 1. And the second is like, okay, like if solving this problem constitutes of X, Y, and Z hypothesis that you have, what is the data sources we will need to make those predictions? So I think, yeah, I think, I know I haven't mentioned any hard skills, but I think that's what I look for.
Yeah, that makes sense. But like, would you be able to tell like all those kind of like good characteristics
Yeah, if I give you
from
a
an
case
interview?
interview, if I give you a
Okay.
case interview and I spend an hour with you in a room, I think, and obviously like, with your, if I look at your background and I interview you, I think I can see most of that.
Okay, cool, awesome. Next one, what kind of like project experience do you think is a good one? I think this is more coming from like say before like a student like getting hired as a full-time like employee, they are only exposed to certain types of projects, right?
Yeah.
Out of those, which one could help them like during a job interview?
So there's the technical side of it, which I can't comment on too much. Like I'm sure you can find a bunch of resources online, but I think I think what's crucial is your role on the project, right? Are you driving the think? Okay. Okay. So two things. One, what is the type of problem you're solving, and is it a relevant problem for the world in general, and is it an impactful problem, and is it interesting, right? Or are you just doing something that people have been doing for 10 years, and you're learning what they did, and you're not really applying any critical or ambiguous thinking, and you're just doing what people have been doing for 10 years. And the second is, what's your role on the project, right? And I think it's very important to, obviously, like one person can't do everything on the project, but typically the intellectual frameworks of a project and the actual thinking and the horsepower of getting to blockers and then solving them, or reaching out to people and setting out what your data sources are or whatever for the project, like that's typically done by probably 20% of the project team. So ensuring that you're part of the 20% that does that, and not the 80% that's just going to do the legwork or not going to do anything. I think that's important.
Cool. Yeah, that's exactly the answer that I think I was looking to hear, and I think that's definitely very inspirational for lots of students. Like recently, we got like a lot of requests asking, like, say, like I want to transition into data science field, but like I'm not having the relevant degree. I want to do some projects to enhance my resume. What kind of like project I should pick? So yeah, I think
the cool thing about data science is like you can do it for anything, right? Like, oh, I forgot to mention my favorite project at BMO, but like we're using data to predict the impact of climate change on a bunch of our portfolios. Now, that's not something that's typically done, right? Like there's a couple of startups in San Francisco that do it. But if you come up with a story like that and you tell your employer, and then you can talk in depth about it, like these are the data sources we use, these are the problems we ran into, and like this is how I went to the Globe and Mail website and like got all the pricing data to build my correlation maps, like that's cool, right? So I don't think data science is restrictive in any way. Like you can do it to solve anything. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's definitely something like lots of them can do, right? Like just go find a website, use their APIs, build a cool project, and then showcase during a job interview. That's definitely not too hard.
And there's like research papers on everything. So
yep. All right. So what would you say the best route to strategy consulting from engineering?
Yeah. Okay. So there's two parts to this, right? Like one is getting an interview. And getting an interview means you have to have good grades. You have to have demonstrated leadership in some way, shape, or form. And you will have had to demonstrate your work ethic beyond grades in some way, shape, or form. And like you'll have to build a contact and like talk to people, learn about the profession, and ensure you have a good elevator pitch and things like that. So all of that is really important to getting the interview and get someone to like you. So that's getting the interview, and then there's acing the interview. And acing the interview is all about your unique approach to problem solving and practice. So I think those are the key things. Nothing beats hard work, right? Like nothing beats hard work and authenticity. Like if you can work really hard, develop the credentials to get the interviews, and then be authentic in your stories and your problem solving, like I don't see why it would be difficult to get in, particularly because I think even strategy consulting firms are hiring more and more engineers right now, right? Like it's not all Rockman graduates, thankfully.
Cool. Yeah, no. So how do you compare the AI solutions or use cases between commercial banks and technology companies? That's an interesting one.
So commercial banks meaning like BMO and technology company?
I guess so, yeah.
I think there's a fundamental, I don't think the quality of stuff we work on is inferior in any way. Like we're solving very, very cool problems, right? And we're solving problems that are very, very impactful. You probably will work on cooler problems at a bank than you would at a technology company, as counterintuitive as that sounds. Like I have a friend who works on the machine learning team in Microsoft, and all he does is make backend tweaks to make sure that their email autofill is more efficient, right? He's a super smart guy who's studying at Stanford. But I get to work on using machine learning to assess the impact of climate change, which I think is very, very cool, right? Or we're doing price segmentations, or we're doing recommendation engines. So in terms of the type of problem, I think we might actually have an advantage, right? And also it's very directly customer facing, which is really cool, right? Like if I do something and work on this project, I can very quickly see the impact on a very big customer base. The challenge is that the way these organizations are structured, like banks or airlines or whatever, like they're not digitally native. So that brings its own challenges, and that will mean that sometimes it's hard to get traction and work on cool stuff. Sometimes it takes a while for cool stuff to get executed. And sometimes like you will have to fight an uphill battle to build the right cross-functional teams to drive transformation. So I think that's what the challenge is. But if you get into the right team and work on the right problems, like I, I think it's a lot of fun and it's very cool.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think 2 cents that I want to share is
Yeah.
just know the team that you are joining, right? Like in
Yeah.
Amazon, there is a cool team called Alexa, but there are hundreds of like not that cool team called XYZ. So
Yeah.
yeah, just make sure you know which team you are joining. Like in banks, like say in Manulife, there are different teams working on different kind of like areas and fields. Just
Yeah.
find like if I have the options, pick the right one for you. Don't care about like they're on the same level of names, so it doesn't really matter which like commercial banks versus or like technology companies.
Yeah, yeah, and I fight it every day, right? Like so many of my friends are working in Google or whatever now, and I'm like, that's really cool. But then I think about their role specifically, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Versus like I get a lot of fun at work, right?
Yeah. All right. So how often do you get to apply one of the state-of-the-art machine learning algorithms in your day-to-day job, or you
Yeah.
apply more simple and robust algorithms for explainability?
Yeah. So, I think the right algorithm for the right use case is important, but the principle that the machine learning leader on my team uses, one of the machine learning leaders, is that if there's no discernible advantage to using advanced techniques, we won't do that project. Right? Because we're part of the AI Center of Excellence that's centralized, and then like, excuse me, all the line of businesses have their own teams who can do the more simple stuff. So, for example, a great example is transactional data, right? Like if we're building predictions based on transactional data, we can't use a simple logistic regression to do it, right? Like we'll have to use deep learning or like, business outcome projections. So that's something that is a guiding principle. And, we like to use the cooler algorithms, but at the end of the day, like if something requires a simpler algorithm, like, we'll do it. It's all about outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I guess the answer would be depends on if we need to explain the model or not.
Yeah, exactly. And, more often than not, we'll pick projects where we don't have to.
That's smart. Yep. Okay, so I think that's all the questions we have prepared on the slides. For the next 15 minutes, we'll just move to Slido and see what kind of questions people ask. Oh, we
Okay.
got quite a few today. That's nice.
Wow. Okay. I'll go fast.
All right. So could you throw some light on non-traditional and more management-focused roles in the data industry? How to navigate to these roles?
Yeah, look, I think there's, so many roles in so many different domains, right? Like if you think about data governance is a huge field. If you think about like, just being a normal, like a data analyst or in QA or, architecture, like there's so many roles that are focused on data right now. Some of them I find more interesting than others, and that's my own bias, but I think there's a real shortage of people who understand product and machine learning. And I think those people are going to be really crucial over the next 10 years. So if you think about, digital transformation as a curve, like the baseline digital transformation, and the way I define that is like rules-based digital products that can do job A and take you from step through a series of steps and can do and can essentially do a job for you, like, you know, like ordering groceries, right? Or paying a check on your mobile app. That baseline digital transformation is done, right? The next step is going to be all about data. And it's going to be, for example, for Uber, it's going to be making their prices more sensitive to get more profitability, or tweaking their product designs to ensure that they're prioritizing the right customers with how fast they go and making those kinds of predictions. Or for banks, it's going to be like predicting and helping you to run your business and go beyond banking to drive that transformation. So I think that's where there'll be a real focus, and where I'm trying to position myself over the next 10 years to drive impact. And I think that'll be an area of interest.
Cool. What would you say the skills related with, like, say, product in machine learning, like
Yeah,
product, like
I'm
Scrum,
trying to
Agile,
figure.
that kind of?
yeah, I'm trying to figure that out myself, right? Like, but I think there's the core product skill set, which is like the very, I don't want to say basic because even product is pretty immature, right? Right. But like, there's certifications you can do on BrainStation or Coursera or whatever to learn it. But like, user stories, wireframes, feature prioritization, backlog grooming, I think, that'll be important. But also thinking about what that means in the context of machine learning. So having that baseline of understanding how data science works, how algorithms work, how to think strategically about data will be really important. So, you have the right feedback loops going, you build the right data assets and all of that. Yeah, I think those are the two things that are important. Like a product manager is a product manager. And I think a lot of it you'll have to, learn with experience. But I think if you combine those two things well, and like strategy always helps, right? Like if you understand strategy and if you think strategically, like I think that's a winning combination.
Cool. Awesome. Let's move to the next one. What would be your best advice to someone transitioning from non-technical background to land a data center? I feel the one somehow overlap with the other one.
Yeah, and I think the premise of that question is like, is that all data-centric positions are technical, which I don't agree with, right? So I question the premise of that question, and I don't think it's accurate.
Okay. All right. So next one, how you shifted from management to data science? Well, did you? I'm not sure if you shifted.
I think it was a little bit of a like. I think it's more focus. I think like spending a few years in strategy consulting, I'm biased, but it's a phenomenal skill set to have. You know how to speak to executives, you know how executives think, and you know how to drive transformation. So I still do the same stuff, but I just focus on data science more, which means I have to learn how algorithms work and what the key trends are and what the constraints are. Yeah, and product.
Okay. Cool. Next one is actually from me. What is your favorite type of coffee?
Do you mean like the actual drink or like a coffee chat?
Or both? Or both. Like, yeah.
Okay. My favorite type of coffee drink is like pretty basic, but probably a very good skim milk latte.
Okay.
My favorite type of coffee chat is when I feel that there's genuine intellectual curiosity towards my story or towards with that comes with the questions people are asking. Like it's very easy for me to see through when people want to talk to me just to get a job, and that's fine. But like if you just want to get a job but you're not interested in what the job is, like as a former strategy consultant, like it's very easy for me to see through that. So
I see. Do you like usually accept like say people you don't know just for coffee chats, or rarely do
yeah,
that?
I'm not bad with them, to be honest, like, but more and more I'm having to prioritize a little bit, especially with COVID. Like I have Zoom fatigue. Um, but yeah, I'm not bad. I'm pretty open to it. Like if people can articulate what their story is, what they're trying to get out of the chat, and not, and have a very good reason for me to accept the coffee chat, like I'm very open.
I see. Yeah. Be
Yeah,
prepared
like
for that because
I had a coffee chat with you on your first week at Deloitte, right? Like
right. Yes. But be prepared. Last time we had our chat with Chai, and then he received like 20 LinkedIn connections, and yeah,
okay.
a lot of like virtual coffee. He said like he had like 4 virtual coffees a day consecutively. So yeah.
Well, don't be offended if I say yes to some coffees, and if I don't say yes to some, like it means they've done a better job of articulating the story.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I do, just out of curiosity, if someone reaches out to you and say, yeah, I listened to your story during this, and uh, just like, I guess my question is like, how does a candidate, or like, how does someone get into the list of the acceptance, not the other one? Like say, if he or she opens up her camera or ask like interesting questions, what would be the right way to do that?
Yeah, I think it's important to draw the line of where you're at and where you want to go and how I can help you get there. That's number one. Number two, like this is actually me reflecting on like historical incidents, but like having a point of connection always works, right? So when you reached out to me about coffee, you said, hey, Sean Kanungo one day said I should reach out and we're from the same school and I just joined your practice. And I'm like, okay, I have to talk to this guy. It seems cool. So I think that helps as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, why do you want to talk to me versus all the other people you want to talk to? You have the option of talking to. Is it because I've done this like 12 coffees thing? Because that's not a good, like, that's not a great reason, right?
Yeah. All right. So I'll just move on the question list. Well, I think we have this one. What are you looking for in candidates
No,
that
sorry,
want to
sorry.
work?
I was looking at the question above that. That's really,
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I skipped this one. Oh, I skipped a couple actually.
no, that's fine. What are your
All right, let's.
resources available online? I'm doing a BrainStation course right now, and I really like it, but it's expensive. So Coursera, I've heard, is really good. How was I
Yeah.
able to advance to a senior role as I appear quite long? Yeah, very fortunate. I was 26 when I first landed a senior manager role, which is like, if you know banks, it's like really, really, really young. But I think um, it's having one an output mindset. So thinking about outputs rather than all the inputs, and then age is one of your sort of age/experiences, like one of your sort of features for inputs, and it doesn't really matter. And the second is that and I know this is harder for a lot of people, but one of the things they test in strategy consulting is strong opinions loosely held. So I personally am a very disagreeable person, um, and which what that means is that sometimes I'll seem argumentative, but what I'm trying to optimize for is get to the right answer. So I think that helps a lot, just to have a voice. And you know executives certainly sort of appreciate that, and not let your sort of youth or inexperience or whatever get in the way of having an informed opinion, which but the challenge to that is like having the self-awareness to, like, when someone challenges it with legitimate reason, like, move away from that and like accept other people's points of views as well. So I think if you marry the two, that helps. And the third is to be a self-starter and have intellectual curiosity. My boss never tells me what to do, thankfully, because I probably would have quit if she did. But like, but like the good thing, like, and the reason she doesn't tell me what to do is because I'm very good at generating work, right? I'm very good at saying, hey, here's an article I read in the news. Shopify is entering banking. What is our competitive response? And how are we gonna deal with that? Hey, leader of small business banking, guess what? Shopify is entering banking. They're doing all these cool things with data. How are we going to respond to that? And boom, that leads to a project. And I'm very proactive about telling my managers, like, here's the 5 different things I'm working on. This is priority number 1. If you want me to add something, like, I can't do that. Like, I'll have to shift the priorities around. So all of those, I think, help.
Cool. I think one thing that we didn't cover today is the
Yeah.
importance of speaking multiple languages. Anything you wanna
Yeah.
touch about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I keep talking about cross-functional teams, but my role is really important, as you saw from that Venn diagram, because I have to talk to senior executives to get their buy-in on projects and to get them bought into our ideas, but also flag uh, risks and opportunities to them. I have to talk to data scientists, and anyone who's talked to data scientists and doesn't come from a technical background knows that that can be really painful. Like, you have to explain everything in rows and columns and populations and variables and features. I have to be able to talk to designers and help have them design end solutions that are going to drive customer impact. And then I have to talk to developers and architects, and everything to them is like back end versus front end and endpoints versus features, right? So I think part of why, thankfully, knock on wood, I've been doing well at this job is that I'm able to tailor my communication style with like genuine empathy for each of those functions. And I serve sort of as the conduit to drive transformations across all of those groups, because without this role and without the personality type to do it, like we're not going to drive transformation. So I think it's critical. And what really helps with that is one, genuine empathy, like I mentioned, but also like understanding, and that is like, you have to understand where that person is coming from and what their training is and what they respond to. But the second is like tailoring your communication style to that, right? Like to one, the subject matter. So I mentioned like to a data scientist, not picking on you, but like everything is rows and columns and features and variables, right? Have to speak your language. But then you're also probably a bottom-up communicator versus a top-down communicator, right? So when I talk to executives, I have to say, this is why it matters, X, Y, and Z, and then break it down the pyramid. Versus when I talk to you, I have to kind of start at the bottom and then work my way up. Like, this is the thing you have to do. These are the variables. This is why it matters. And then this is how it fits into the project. So I think like combining both the subject matter with the style of communication that resonates with people, I think is really important.
That's cool. Yeah, I think the talking skill with the executives are just like so hard to master. I think that's
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably master that like during the management consulting experiences. That's
yeah, very, very fortunate, honestly. But also like, we can learn about it online. There's frameworks. There's a framework by McKinsey called Minto, which is actually like, Google that. That's how I talk.
Okay, cool, awesome. Well, we're almost 8 here, so let me just like wrap up today's meeting. Just like by
I'm
thank
happy
you.
to go for 10 more minutes if
Oh
anyone is
sure,
interested.
yeah, for sure. Like we can just keep moving on this question
Okay.
list if that's
Yeah.
okay. All right. So maybe just like before that, our next meeting will be 2 weeks from today. That will be with a senior manager from RPC this time. She is a product manager as well. So she is coming from a design background, which is very interesting. She will talk about like design thinking and all the kinds of problem not solving by management consulting, but like solved by design thinking. So that would be interesting to listen through and compare as well. So okay, let's keep moving.
Yeah,
Where
that
were
would
we?
be a lot of fun. I love designers. Okay. I think I answered that. Can you help us understand the various department orgs within BMO that are involved in AI? So we have the centralized Data and AI Center of Excellence, which is where I'm from. And then we have decentralized teams within the lines of businesses. So capital markets, for example, has a really strong AI team, personal banking as well, et cetera. And we sort of service the hub to all these folks. We accelerate outcomes for them. Yeah, but that's essentially how it's structured. And then we have the data teams and the AI teams.
Cool. Actually, I just want to insert one question in the middle. How many hours do you work per week?
How many hours?
Yeah. Honestly
I've
speaking.
gotten a lot better since I left consulting, to be honest. Like I think I'm still bad at thinking about work 24/7 because like that's just how I am. But I don't work much longer unless it's absolutely needed than like a normal person would.
Okay. How about in management consulting? How many hours like averagely here?
It really depended on the project and it went
What's the
in waves.
worst worst case there?
Oof. I don't want to scar people. Consistently, like I'd work like 60, 70 hours a week. But like, I remember this one time and like the person I was stuck in with this is one of my best friends now. But we were told, jumped on this project and it was supposed to be that we had a workshop with like a new CEO and all his executives 3 weeks from the project start. We were told on the Monday that we started the project that the workshop is on Thursday. So we had to compress 3 weeks worth of work into 3 days, come up with an entirely new market perspective and get all these executives aligned on a vision. And we were at the office 3 a.m., 2 a.m., 2 a.m., and before an 8 a.m. meeting. And we had a lot of sushi. But yeah, that was the worst.
All right. I don't think that would scare people. People these days they're strong.
It was interesting. I got to meet a CEO and like got to sit in executive boardrooms, which was fun.
Yeah. Was the result good? Like, were they happy with the work?
Yeah, they were happy with the work. We made a lot of we sold a lot more follow-on work from that. So all of that is good. And like, I have a genuine relationship with the CEO and the CDO from that organization, which is, nice. That's all good.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So I think it's this one.
what are the metrics you use to describe the success? So like, I'm going to give a non-technical answer because I come from strategy and product, but then we have data scientists who are going to tell you all sorts of things like F scores and things like that that I don't understand very well. But like, there's the model success, but the success that I define myself with is like, how many people are using this solution? Are we getting engagement at the right level of the organization? And how many dollars are we driving through it, right? And how much does it improve the customer experience? I think those are the metrics that matter to me, rather than like model accuracy, because I take, I pass off that responsibility onto our machine learning folks.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, let's just quickly go through the question list. What is your advice for quickly adapt and learn from a new field?
First principles thinking. Elon Musk talks about it a lot, but I think it's absolutely critical, and why I think I've been able to make the transitions that I've been able to make, but essentially distill everything to its most foundational elements and then reason down from there. So at the very top of the pyramid, and consultants do this a lot. So for example, if you're evaluating a business, it's like revenue times profitability, right? It's a very messy way to look at it, and that's the top of the house thing. And then you can drill down, right? Which business units have which revenue? What is the profitability coming from? What is the operating efficiency versus all this other stuff? But then, you can do that for anything, right? Like you can do that for, I don't know, any digital product, or you can do that for, breaking out any function in any organization. But like, if you distill everything to the absolute basic components, which are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, and is at the very top level, and then reason down from there, I think that's the key to learning anything.
Yeah, one feedback we got from the audience before is like, we didn't explain the jargons enough. So MISI, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. That's a very common framework used by case interviews. So look up for that. I think it's definitely something that everyone should know. It's just like a way of think of like solving a problem.
For sure, and it'll apply to your life as well.
Yep. All right, so how do you set the timeline and team involvement for a single project?
Yeah. So team is easy. Team is like, what I ask myself, what are the skill sets required to make this project a success? For example, I brought on a designer to this team because we thought it was absolutely crucial. Timelines are a little harder, particularly in machine learning, because the outputs are a little, difficult to gauge sometimes. But if you give yourself enough buffer, I think that helps a lot.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna cheat by upvoting my own question.
Yeah.
How long does it take for you to review a resume? Like, say, if you are interviewing someone.
I'm very bad. I'm very bad at this. I don't take very long. And I probably need to work on that, but I don't think it takes me more than.
Oprah said it took him 5 seconds.
Okay,
per resume.
Now I feel less bad. I think there's an initial scan that takes 5 seconds, but then I'll force myself to take like 30 seconds to a minute at once.
Yeah, I think he said like, if he doesn't find interesting information, then he probably just pass by, because just there are too many needs to be finished in a night. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's one. Yeah.
What we did in Monitor, at least, was, we didn't have any HR people helping us. We did a first layer scanning, which was like really quick, interesting, not interesting. And then we spent a bit of time with the second layer. So yeah, I think the first layer would have been 10, 15 seconds. And then we delved deeper into the rest.
Yeah, that's why always have that kind of like an executive summary box at the top of the resume could help.
For sure.
Yeah. I just recently found like a lot of like people reach out and their resume is very long, very wordy, and doesn't have that summary box. It's better to have them. Would help.
Again, like top-down thinking, right? The summary says your entire story, and everything else should support that, right? Versus like, if I have to go through all of these bullets to know what your story is, you're not a good communicator.
Okay, let's just do one more question.
Sure.
think we went through all of them. I think there's one very interesting. What is in your mind that 5 years from now the AI-enabled banking system will be like?
Like there's a Bill Gates quote, which is like, we underestimate the change in the next 2 years, but that we overestimate the change in the next 2 years and then underestimate it in the next 10 years. So I think it's easier to answer 10 years out than like 5 years out. 5 years is like sort of in between those extremes. I think banks are going to go beyond banking a lot, right? Like they're going to give you insights and experiences that are going to help you manage your life or your business outside of what a traditional bank would do. I think that's really critical. I also think majority of the innovation over the next 10 years and why I decided to switch to this data science field is going to be data driven. Algorithms are going to be making predictions about, you know, things that you weren't even aware of, and that's going to help you, you know, make your life better. I think what this person is more interested in is like, you know, what is the mix between human versus non-human advice and like more frontline interactions. And like I think the human is really important. Like I pay BMO. I don't pay anything for banking now, but before, when I paid BMO for banking, like I wanted the human advice for important decisions like buying a house, and I think that'll always stay. But like the more menial stuff, I think will be very digital.
So I think like for me, I don't care who, if it's the person makes the decision or it's the model makes the decision, as long as I'm informed by a person, I'm happy. So
yeah. Or like the person says the model thinks that you're gonna buy a house because of this.
Yeah, as long as it's something that I want, I don't care much. But if it's not, then
yeah, absolutely. But if I'm buying a house and I'm spending $1 million on it or whatever, like I would want a human to like talk to me.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. I think we're right at the time. I just want to thank you so much, Shahrukh, and thank you for all the lovely people who stayed after 8. So yeah, next meeting will be 2 weeks from today. Hopefully, we will see you again by that time. Everybody have a good evening and take care.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time. Take it easy.